Guys, I quit. No, let me say it. I quit. Bro, what the CG, 3D, CGI, or whatever you want to call it. It's one of the most debated topics when it comes to production or animation in anime. The most hated thing when it comes to animation because of how consistently bad CG is for most of the mainstream projects or majority of anime. Only in recent times that CG is now being used a lot more compared to years ago, because nowadays most anime productions have terrible scheduling and sometimes they have to compensate that with CG. But also some studios just don't have that much resources for some projects. Some shows can use CG as an option to save time, but some deliberately use it for the advantages it can have. Why do they even use CG? There's a lot of advantages of CGI, but the main factor is time. Again, most studios in today's industry don't get enough time for animators making a lot of drawings. There's two types of CG, foreground and backgrounds. Foreground is basically stuff that are the main focus in the shot, like characters or objects that are close, and backgrounds are backgrounds. Yeah, mostly for characters, making a 3D model is easier for it to move a lot because drawing characters moving all over the place, it's time consuming and also difficult because you have to draw unique drawings every couple of frames depending on how much frame it has for the characters, and there's a lot of factors on why it's harder. You have to get the proportions right, the perspectives, and sometimes you have to match the character's personality depending on what character you're animating. Of course, I'm not saying there isn't animators who can do good character acting. There's a lot of examples of animators that specializes or better at character acting with high frame count or low frame count. But for CG, you just need a 3D model and you can move it around because the characters is three-dimensional, while 2D is flat. You don't have to convey depth when it comes to 3D. And for backgrounds, again, same thing. Drawing a very detailed background, it's time consuming, so they opt for 3D backgrounds. I'm kind of surprised that some people don't even know that the backgrounds are sometimes 3D compared to like foreground CG. While CG is more expensive but less time consuming to make, but what makes good CGI? There's one answer. Ready? Budget. Am I right, Shonen fan? If you believe that, there's mainly three factors: a good model, good movements, and good composite. A good model can go a long way. For characters, having it close to the actual 2D character designs can help it blend when you're switching to 3D for a couple of cuts. A good example is some cuts in Demon Slayer Season 1. I'm not saying you need the details of detailed designs. No, that's not really a necessity, and it's quite limited on how much detail you can put compared to a 2D drawing. It can also backfire having too detailed designs. But for mechas and monsters, it's different. You've probably seen some god-awful CG dragons or mechas because you need someone to actually draw good consistent monsters or have someone animation direct the drawings. Big detailed creature drawings can only work for animators who has a lot of experience in the industry. Of course, there's some that's not like veterans who draw amazingly. Most studios don't have the resources or limited schedule. Let's say some isekai that's low effort. You don't have the talent to draw a big ass monster, so they just opt for CG. I mean, that dog shit Demon King CGI literally inspired me to make this video. For mechas too, if you have a very detailed mecha, it can be very appealing, or you can do it like the Gridman series where the design can be a bit more simplified, but it just works and they use that advantage of CG to make the fights very destructive and big scaled. Another different type of CG, like vehicle CG, used very well is from Girl and Panzer. The tanks are CG, the backgrounds are CG, so that you can have these very dynamic shots, and also long shots are more easier to do. The second factor, movement. Does this mean fluid movements? No, it's more so movements that feel natural and realistic like 2D. Also, a lot of shows fail on that front. It can be stiff, unnatural movements like a fight or just characters moving. Shows like Love Life does this very well. The team in Sunrise has been improving and perfecting their 3D, and now it's almost perfect. The dance feel very natural, and they also go back and forth with 2D cuts and 3D cuts just so that it's more appealing. Fluid movements is also very good. A recent example is Girls Band Cry. They can have these consistent, exaggerated, and expressive facial expressions because of the 3D models, and from what I see, the performance are also good. And probably the most important one, composite. When two different dimensions interact with each other, you have to mix those two aspects very well. This is mainly for 3D backgrounds. If you don't composite the drawings to the 3D backgrounds good, it will feel very floaty and not grounded. That could lead the sequence not having much impact or just feel very weird. Clever storyboarding work and good post-processing can also mask CGI if you don't want it to stick out. Take Take this cut in Hibike Euphonium's OP. Before any composite, you can clearly see the CG characters, but after I don't know how many layers of compositing, adding motion blur and some lens flare so that they could mask the CG very well because it's not the main focus, the shot is conveying that this girl, Kumiko, is leading the class. People's opinion towards CG is mostly negative because bad CG outshine good CG. Most studios use it for the lack of resources and it's not intentional. Like with Mappa shows, Levi vs Beast Titan in the final season would have been 2D because it already had a 2D layout for it, but they didn't have time to animate it, so they just used CG instead. Same goes for some of the Denji vs Katana Man fight. It had a rough layout to it, although it's very rough. Again, didn't have time, so they use CG. And there's a lot of steps after layouts, so that's why they don't have time. I'm also not saying the CG is bad. Chainsaw Man one was good. The Attack on Titan one, it's okay I guess, for that particular scene. The CG department can't operate well too if they don't have time. Duh. It can lead to absolute absolute CG. They don't use CG for creative purposes, they use it because they have to, and also sometimes you don't have a good CG director or even a series director that can supervise the people in that department so they can learn what is good or bad, and that's probably what is lacking in that department or just the industry as a whole. Most new freelancers that want to get into the industry are just brought to a project to do this thing that they're not suited for yet, with limited knowledge, time that they have to just get it done, not to express their creativity. It's not something you can improve at. That's why KyoAni has always stood tall as a studio, because they are training young talent and then hiring them when they have the right necessity to work in the industry / studio. Most of the commercials by KyoAni are composed with young new hired animators while being supervised by veterans in the studio. In the surface level, you can't see it, but some animators does use 3D assistant to make sequences. People like Goso and Iko Geso, just to name some, does use 3D to help them make very dynamic shots, then drawing it on top of that. It's kind of like rotoscoping, but that's using real people to make the 3D models. These people map out the sequences in 3D, then trace it to get the perspectives easier. Of course, they have to draw the hair, body proportions, and other stuff by themselves. It's not one-to-one. I mean, rotoscoping can still look bad if it's rushed. I mean, look at the recent Ninja Kamui episode. Ufotable also does it too. They map out the sequence in 3D, then they just draw on top of it. But some studios excel at the 3D aspects or even producing full 3D shows. Mappa's in-house CG team has been improving a lot. Recently we saw it in Chainsaw Man and Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan CG is probably the best that Mappa has produced, and again with Chainsaw Man, although it can be good or bad sometimes, but that's just because of scheduling issues and needed more help from other studios on the CG. Of course Mappa. Oh well, I never heard bad managing before. I mean, compare the CG from old shows from Mappa, god damn that shit was awful. Ufotable has been pushing the boundaries of CG. I think they are the studio when it comes to pushing CG to its fullest. CG backgrounds of course, very dynamic shots, and it's composited super well. They do use a lot of CG because the studio don't have the strongest line of animators. Yes, they have Nozomu Abe that does most of the climactic moments, Masayuki Kunihiro filling in the gaps with amazing sequences, some other Ufotable animators, and still bringing in freelancers, but they do have to save the resources for the big fights. I'm not saying Ufotable shows don't have good character acting, but it's not frequent. KyoAni again, another good example, although the CG usage is not much compared to Ufotable because they have a lot of manpower while also not relying on freelancers, and the studio takes their sweet time, which helps too. Same goes for Ufotable. While for a fully CG studio like Studio Orange, that is one of, if not the only example of a good full 3D studio that excel at this aspect, shows like Beastars and Lana the Lustrous making a statement that full 3D anime can look beautiful, and recently they did Trigun Stampede. From the clips I've seen, or just people praising the CG, that it is the studio's best work in terms of 3D. Polygon Pictures is another full 3D studio. I haven't watched a single show from them, but back then people are saying that they are improving. I've seen some trailers for the stuff that they've worked on recently. For a full 3D studio, it's pretty meh. Mappa's CG team probably does it better. People are divided when it comes to the usage of CGI. We have to accept that in the future it's gonna be used even more to assist the production. Love it or hate it, it will stay for the foreseeable future. Of course, it won't be used more than 2D drawings. CG will never caught up to the traditional hand-drawn or digitally hand-drawing. This is not CG by the way, you dumbasses. I will always prefer hand-drawn stuff. It's just more appealing and impressive because that's what makes anime stand out compared to different mediums. But CG can be impressive too sometimes. But yeah, if you guys like this video, leave a like. If you hate it, Leave a like, comment down below what are your thoughts about CG. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. See you guys next time. Sorry about that. See you guys next time.